The gunshot that ended Matthew Tucker's life didn't just leave a widow in Apache Junction, Arizona territory, but also set fire to every assumption Olivia Tucker had about herself and what she could survive alone. 3 months had passed since that October morning in 1882, when the doctor had delivered the news in her dusty front yard, hat in hand, that her husband's heart had simply given out while riding fence on their struggling cattle ranch. Olivia had stood there, 24 years old, with calluses already forming on her palms from helping Matthew work their land, and felt the earth shift beneath her boots. The ranch sprawled across 200 acres of stubborn Arizona earth, home to 73 head of cattle that needed constant watching, a barn that leaked when the rare rains came, and a house Matthew had promised to finish before their 5th anniversary. They had been married for 3. Now, January wind howled through the gaps in that unfinished house, and Olivia stood at her kitchen window watching the cattle bunch together against the cold. She had exactly $47 left in the tin behind the stove, 3 fence posts that needed replacing before the week was out, and a growing understanding that sympathy had an expiration date in frontier towns. The knock on her door came just after dawn, and Olivia already knew who it would be. Reverend Hastings had that particular rhythm to his knocking, polite but persistent, like he was trying to wake someone from a pleasant dream into harsh reality. Mrs. Tucker. He removed his hat as she opened the door, his wife standing slightly behind him with a covered basket. "We have been discussing your situation with the congregation. Have you now?" Olivia did not phrase it as a question. She kept her hand on the door, not inviting them in. "The church has taken up a collection," Mrs. Hastings said, stepping forward with the basket. "And we have found you a position as a seamstress with the Caldwell family in town. They are willing to provide room and board in exchange for your services, and Mrs. Caldwell says she could pay a small wage besides." Olivia looked at the basket, then at the faces of the well-meaning couple before her. The basket no doubt contained bread, perhaps some preserves, maybe a bit of salt pork, things she needed, things that would help her survive another week. "I appreciate your concern," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the cold working its way through her thin shawl. "But I will not be taking charity, and I will not be leaving my ranch." Reverend Hastings exchanged a glance with his wife. "Mrs. Tucker, please be reasonable. You cannot manage this property alone. It is not proper, and it is not possible. A woman of your years should be thinking of remarriage, perhaps, or at least accepting help when it is offered in Christian kindness." "What I should be thinking of," Olivia said, feeling heat rise in her chest despite the January chill, "is how to fix my south fence before my cattle wander into Jacobson's property, and he decides to keep them. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." She closed the door before they could protest further, leaning against it and listening to their footsteps retreat across her porch. Through the window, she watched them climb back into their wagon, Mrs. Hastings still clutching that basket of charity, shaking her head with what Olivia knew was a mixture of pity and disapproval. The problem was that Reverend Hastings was not entirely wrong. The ranch was slowly falling apart around her, and Olivia's determination could not replace broken fence posts or repair a barn roof or herd cattle when they scattered during a storm. She had managed so far through sheer stubbornness and the basic knowledge Matthew had taught her, but winter was the easy season. Come spring, there would be calving, branding, and a dozen other tasks she had only ever helped with, never managed alone. She pulled on Matthew's old work coat, far too large for her frame, and headed out to assess the fence damage. The morning sun was just breaking over the Superstition Mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. This land had cost Matthew everything he had saved working as a railroad hand for 6 years. He had chosen this spot because of the natural spring that bubbled up in the northeast corner, because the grazing was decent enough, and because he had believed in building something that would last. Olivia reached the damaged fence and crouched down to examine where the posts had rotted through. She would need to dig new holes, set new posts, restring the wire. A full day's work, maybe 2. She had done it once before with Matthew guiding her, his hands over hers showing her how to brace the post, how to tamp the earth tight. That fence is not going to fix itself with you just staring at it. Olivia spun around, hand instinctively going to the revolver she had started carrying on her hip. A man sat astride a roan horse about 20 yards away, and she cursed herself for being so lost in thought that she had not heard him approach. He was tall, she could tell even with him mounted, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days' worth of beard shadowing his jaw. His clothes were work-worn but well-maintained, and he sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had spent more time in a saddle than out of it. "This is private property," Olivia said, not moving her hand from her revolver. "State your business or move along." The man raised both hands, showing them empty. "Name is Owen Quincy. I have been working the Morrison spread about 10 miles north, but the old man sold out last week to some Eastern investors who brought in their own crew." He nodded toward her fence. "Heard in town you might need help with your operation." "Heard wrong," Olivia said flatly. "I am not hiring." "Did not figure you were, given how folks in town talk about your situation." Owen swung down from his horse, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. "But I have a different proposition if you are willing to hear it." "I am not interested in propositions, Mr. Quincy. I am not interested in charity dressed up as help, and I am certainly not interested in some drifter cowboy thinking a widow is an easy mark." Something flickered across Owen's face, part amusement, part respect. "Fair enough. But what I am offering is not charity, Mrs. Tucker. It is a partnership." Olivia laughed, sharp and bitter. "A partnership? You want to partner with a widow who has 73 head of cattle and a ranch held together with prayer and baling wire." "I want to partner with someone who turned down the church charity and told Reverend Hastings to his face that she was not leaving her land." Owen took a few steps closer, and Olivia could see his eyes were a dark brown, direct and honest. "That takes backbone. And backbone is worth more than capital in this territory. You do not know anything about me. I know you have been out here every morning before dawn checking your herd. I know you ride that paint mare in your barn like she is part of you, and I know you have been studying your land like you are trying to memorize every inch of it." Owen held up a hand before Olivia could ask. "I have been camping in the foothills for 3 days, trying to decide if you were worth approaching. Wanted to see if you were the kind who would give up or the kind who would fight. So you have been spying on me. I have been doing my research. There is a difference." Owen gestured toward the broken fence. "Here is my offer. I work your ranch as a full partner. I provide the labor, the expertise, whatever capital I can scrape together. You provide the land, the cattle, and the water rights. We split everything down the middle, 50-50. Profits, decisions, all of it." Olivia stared at him, trying to find the angle, the catch. "That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. You would be bringing all the work and getting half of not very much. Maybe. Or maybe I would be getting half of something that could actually become something more." Owen picked up one of the rotted fence posts, examining it. "I have been working other men's cattle for 12 years, Mrs. Tucker. Saved up enough 3 times to buy my own place and lost it all 3 times to bad luck, bad weather, and bad partners. I am 31 years old, and I am tired of building someone else's dream. So you want to build mine instead? I want to build ours. Owen met her eyes steadily. You need help, whether you want to admit it or not, and I need a stake in something real. This could work for both of us. Olivia wanted to say no. Every instinct told her to send this stranger packing, to maintain her stubborn independence even if it meant watching everything Matthew had built crumble around her. But she looked at the fence, at the distant cattle, at the ranch spread out in the morning light, and she thought about what would happen in 2 months, in 6 months, in a year if she kept trying to do this alone. I do not need a partner, she said slowly, but I suppose I do need help. And I would rather have a working partnership than accept charity. Owen nodded. That is all I am asking for, a chance to prove this could work. There would be rules, Olivia said. You would sleep in the barn, not the house. You would work for your share, and if I catch you stealing or cheating, I will shoot you myself. And this is my ranch, my land. Partnership or not, I am not going to be pushed aside or talked over. Would not dream of it. Owen extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Olivia looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. It was calloused, scarred across the knuckles, a working man's hand. Finally, she reached out and shook it firmly. We have a trial period, she said. 1 month. If it is not working out, you move on. No hard feelings. 1 month, Owen agreed. That is fair. They spent the rest of that day working on the fence together, and Olivia quickly realized that Owen Quincy knew his business. He worked efficiently, without wasted motion, setting posts with practiced ease while explaining what he was doing in case she needed to do it alone again. He did not talk down to her or assume she knew nothing, instead asking what Matthew had taught her and building on that foundation. By sunset, they had replaced 6 posts and restrung 100 yards of wire. Olivia's shoulders ached, her hands were raw despite her gloves, but the fence stood straight and strong. I will get my gear from my camp and set up in the barn, Owen said, swinging up onto his horse. Be back before full dark. Olivia watched him ride off, then walked slowly back to her empty house. The silence inside felt different somehow, less oppressive. She lit a lamp, started a fire in the stove, and put coffee on to boil. When Owen returned an hour later leading a pack horse loaded with his possessions, she brought a cup of hot coffee and a plate of beans out to the barn. Thought you might be hungry, she said, handing them over. Owen looked surprised but pleased. Much obliged. I have some salt pork and cornmeal in my pack. I can handle my own cooking, but I appreciate the gesture. We are partners, Olivia said. Partners look out for each other. Just do not expect me to cook for you regular. I have enough to do without adding that to my list. Fair enough. Owen sipped the coffee and sighed with satisfaction. That is good coffee. Olivia turned to leave, then paused. Owen, why did you really pick me? There are other spreads, other opportunities. Owen was quiet for a moment, considering. Because when I watched you these past few days, I saw someone who reminded me of myself. Stubborn, probably to a fault. Determined to make something work even when everyone says it cannot. And because I am tired of partners who do not pull their weight or expect me to do all the heavy lifting while they count the money. I figure if we are both equally invested, both equally stubborn, we might actually make this work. Olivia nodded slowly. It was an honest answer, and she appreciated that. Get some rest. We have cattle to check in the morning, and I want to ride the full property line, see what else needs fixing before spring. That first month passed in a blur of hard work and constant adjustment. Owen was true to his word, working from before dawn until after dark, tackling every job that needed doing without complaint. He fixed the barn roof, cleared brush from around the spring, and spent hours riding the property line checking every inch of fence. More importantly, he watched the cattle with an expert eye. identifying which cows were likely to have trouble calving, which steers were ready for market, and where the herd was weakest. But it was not easy. Olivia was used to doing things her way, Matthew's way, and Owen had different ideas about nearly everything. They argued about which pasture to use for winter grazing, about whether to sell some cattle now or wait for spring prices, about how much hay to put aside for emergencies. "You are being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn," Owen said one afternoon as they stood in the barn looking at their dwindling hay supply. "If we sell 10 head now, we can buy enough hay to see the rest through winter comfortably and have money left for supplies. And if we keep those 10 head through winter, we can sell them in spring for twice the price," Olivia countered. "We have enough hay if we are careful. Matthew always kept the herd together through winter. Matthew had you to help him, and he was not trying to make improvements while keeping things running." Owen pushed his hat back in frustration. "I am not trying to change things just to change them, Olivia. I am trying to make this ranch profitable." It was the first time he had used her given name instead of Mrs. Tucker, and Olivia felt something shift in her chest. They had been working side by side for 3 weeks, sharing meals in companionable silence, discussing the ranch's future late into the evening, but there had been a formality between them, a careful distance. "Fine," she said, surprising herself. "We sell 5 head, not 10. That gives us a buffer for hay and keeps most of the herd intact for spring." Owen blinked, clearly not expecting her to compromise. 5 head. I can work with that. Good. Because this partnership means we both have to give sometimes. Olivia walked past him toward the barn door, then turned back. "And you can call me Olivia. We are past formalities at this point." A smile tugged at Owen's mouth. "Olivia, then. And you should probably stop calling me Mr. Quincy when you are frustrated with me." "I will stop calling you Mr. Quincy when you stop being frustrating," Olivia said, but she was almost smiling too. The truth was that Owen Quincy was frustrating in ways Olivia had not anticipated. He was frustrating because he was right about things she did not want to admit. He was frustrating because he worked harder than anyone she had ever met, making her own exhaustion seem lazy by comparison. And he was frustrating because, somewhere in those 3 weeks, she had stopped seeing him as just a hired hand or a business partner and started seeing him as a man. It happened in small moments. The way he handled her mare with gentle patience when the horse was skittish. The way he listened when she talked about Matthew without looking uncomfortable or pitying. The way he laughed, rare but genuine, when something struck him as truly funny. The way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention, with something in his eyes she was not ready to name. Olivia told herself it was just loneliness, just the natural result of spending every day with someone. She told herself she was still grieving Matthew, still wearing black, still a woman in mourning. But grief was a strange companion, and it left room for other feelings to creep in around the edges. One night near the end of that trial month, a late winter storm rolled in fierce and sudden. Olivia was in the house when she heard Owen shouting, and ran outside to find him trying to herd several cattle that had broken through a weak section of fence and were scattering into the darkness. "Take the left flank," Owen yelled over the wind. "Push them back toward the opening." Olivia ran for the barn, saddled her mare in record time, and rode out into the storm. Rain lashed her face, lightning split the sky, and for a moment she felt pure terror at the wildness of it all. Then her training took over. Matthew's voice in her head telling her how to read the cattle, how to position her horse, how to use the storm itself to push the herd where she needed them to go. She and Owen worked in tandem, anticipating each other's movements, communicating with gestures and shouts barely audible over the thunder. It took an hour to get all the cattle back through the fence, and by the time Owen had rigged a temporary repair, they were both soaked to the bone and shaking with cold. "Get inside," Owen said through chattering teeth. "I will secure the barn." "Come to the house when you are done," Olivia said. "You cannot sleep in the barn like this. You will freeze." She did not wait for him to argue, just ran to the house and immediately started building up the fire in the stove. When Owen knocked 15 minutes later, she had coffee brewing and blankets warming by the fire. "Get out of those wet clothes," she ordered, tossing him one of Matthew's old shirts and a pair of trousers. "You can change behind the bedroom curtain." When Owen emerged, the borrowed clothes were too short in the arms and legs, and despite the gravity of the situation, Olivia felt laughter bubble up in her chest. He looked so absurd, and the expression on his face said he knew it. "Not a word," he warned, but he was fighting a smile too. They sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, warming their hands on cups of hot coffee. The storm raged outside, but inside the house felt safe, almost cozy. "You did good work out there," Owen said after a while. "That was not easy what we just did." "Matthew taught me well," Olivia said. "And you made it easier, knowing what to do without me having to explain." "That is what partners do." Owen looked at her over the rim of his cup. "Speaking of which, the month is almost up. You planning to keep me around?" Olivia had been thinking about this question for days. The truth was she could not imagine running the ranch without Owen now. He had become essential, not just to the work but to her days. She looked forward to their morning rides, to their debates over dinner, to the way he challenged her thinking and pushed her to see possibilities beyond just surviving. "I suppose you have not completely ruined things yet," she said, trying for lightness. "We could extend the trial period. See how spring goes. Or," Owen said slowly, carefully, "we could make it official, draw up proper partnership papers, make it legal. 50-50 like we agreed." Olivia met his eyes, seeing the seriousness there. This was not just about business for him anymore, she realized. This ranch, this partnership, it had become his dream too. "Yes," she said. "Let us make it official." Owen smiled, wide and genuine, and Olivia felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire or the coffee. This was dangerous territory, she knew. Owen was her business partner, and that arrangement worked because it had clear boundaries. But somewhere in the past month, those boundaries had started to blur. The storm passed during the night, and when dawn came, Owen returned to the barn to sleep. But something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of trust and partnership that went deeper than contracts. They rode into Apache Junction the following week to file the partnership papers with the territorial office. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles, looked skeptical as Olivia explained what they wanted. "A full partnership," he repeated. "Not employment. You understand this means you are giving this man equal say in all decisions regarding your property." "I understand perfectly," Olivia said. "And it is not my property anymore. It is our property." The clerk glanced at Owen. "And you are putting up what capital exactly?" "Labor and expertise," Owen said evenly, "which Mrs. Tucker has deemed of equal value to her land and cattle." "Most irregular," the clerk muttered, but he prepared the documents. They both signed, Olivia's hand steady, and just like that, the ranch belonged to both of them. Walking back to where they had tied their horses, Olivia felt lighter somehow, as if sharing the burden had made it more bearable. Owen must have felt something similar because he was smiling. "Partners," he said, offering his hand. "Partners," Olivia agreed, shaking it. His hand was warm and steady in hers, and she held on perhaps a moment longer than necessary. They stopped at the general store for supplies, and Olivia noticed how people looked at them. Some with curiosity, some with disapproval, some with outright speculation. Mrs. Caldwell, the woman who had offered Olivia the seamstress position, made a point of approaching them. "Mrs. Tucker, I heard you took on a hired hand," she said, her eyes raking over Owen with undisguised judgment. "Partner," Olivia corrected. "Owen Quincy is my business partner. We are running the ranch together." Mrs. Caldwell's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "How modern of you. I am sure the Reverend would have thoughts about a widow woman living in such close quarters with a single man." "Good thing the Reverend does not run my ranch," Olivia said sweetly. "Now, if you will excuse us, we have supplies to purchase." As they loaded their wagon, Owen glanced at her. "That is going to make things harder for you. People talk. Let them talk. I stopped caring what people think the day I closed the door on the Reverend's charity basket." Olivia climbed onto the wagon seat. "Besides, we are not doing anything wrong. We are business partners, nothing more." Owen settled beside her and picked up the reins. "Nothing more," he echoed, but something in his voice made Olivia's heart skip. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Olivia watched the landscape roll by, the desert in bloom from winter rains, and wondered what Matthew would think of all this. Would he approve of her partnering with a stranger? Would he understand that she was doing what she had to do to keep his dream alive? But even as she thought of Matthew, she was acutely aware of Owen beside her, the solid warmth of him, the way his hands handled the reins with casual competence. Guilt stabbed through her. It had only been 4 months since Matthew's death. 4 months, and here she was thinking about another man in ways that had nothing to do with business. "You have gone quiet," Owen said. "Something wrong. Just thinking about Matthew," Olivia admitted, wondering what he would make of all this. Owen was silent for a moment. "You loved him." "Yes, very much." Olivia twisted her wedding ring still on her finger. "We met when I was 19. He was working for my father, who ran a freight business in Tucson. Matthew had plans, dreams of owning his own land. He saved every penny for 5 years before he asked my father for permission to marry me. He sounds like a good man. He was, patient and kind and steady. When we bought this land, I had never seen him so happy. He would stand on the porch at sunset and talk about everything we would build, all the plans he had." Olivia's throat tightened. And then his heart just stopped, and all those plans stopped with it. Owen did not offer platitudes or false comfort. He just listened, and Olivia found that meant more than any sympathetic words could have. "I am not trying to replace him," Owen said quietly, "with the ranch or anything else. I just want you to know that." Olivia nodded, not trusting her voice. They did not speak again until they reached the ranch, but the silence felt companionable rather than awkward. Spring arrived in earnest, bringing with it a whole new set of challenges. 3 cows had difficult births, and Owen stayed up 2 nights in a row helping them deliver. Olivia found him in the barn at dawn on the 3rd day, exhausted but triumphant, with 3 healthy calves wobbling around their mothers. "You should have woken me," she said, bringing him coffee and biscuits. "You were up until midnight repairing tack. One of us needed to sleep." Owen accepted the coffee gratefully. "Besides, I have done this before. It is just time and patience." Olivia looked at the calves, at the careful way Owen had bedded the stalls, at the notes he had made about each birth for future reference. He cared about this ranch as much as she did, she realized. Maybe more, because for him it represented everything he had been working toward his entire adult life. "Owen," she said impulsively, "thank you for everything you have done here, for making this partnership real." Owen met her eyes, and the expression in his made her breath catch. "No need to thank me, Olivia. This is exactly where I want to be." The moment stretched between them, charged with something unspoken. Then one of the calves bleated, breaking the spell, and they both laughed. Over the following weeks, Olivia found herself watching Owen more often, noticing things she had tried to ignore. The way the sun caught in his dark hair when he removed his hat, the sound of his laughter, rare but rich, the gentleness in his hands when he handled the animals. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not watching, with an expression that made her heart race. She told herself it was wrong to feel this way. Too soon, too fast, too complicated. But feelings, she was learning, did not much care about propriety or timing. One evening in late April, they sat on the porch after a long day of branding. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, and the air was finally cooling after the heat of the day. Olivia had brought out 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey Matthew had been saving for a special occasion. "Seems like we have earned this," she said, pouring them each a measure. Owen raised his glass. "To partnership." "To partnership," Olivia echoed, and they drank. The whiskey burned pleasantly, warming her from the inside. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade to night, and Olivia felt a contentment she had not experienced in months. Not happiness exactly, not with grief still a constant companion, but something like peace. "Can I ask you something?" Owen said after a while, "of course. Why did you really let me stay? That first day you could have sent me packing. Lord knows you did not trust me, so why give me a chance?" Olivia considered the question, searching for the true answer beneath all her rationalizations. "Because you did not pity me. Everyone else in town looked at me like I was a tragedy waiting to happen, something broken that needed fixing. But you looked at me like I was capable. Like I was someone worth partnering with, and I suppose I wanted to prove you right." Owen nodded slowly. "I did see someone capable, I still do. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met, Olivia Tucker." The way he said her name, soft and sincere, made Olivia's chest tight. She turned to look at him and found him already watching her, his dark eyes reflecting the last light of the sunset. "Owen," she began, not knowing what she intended to say, but before she could continue, riders appeared on the horizon, 3 of them coming fast. Olivia and Owen were on their feet immediately, the intimate moment shattered by the reality of frontier life. The riders pulled up in front of the porch, and Olivia recognized the lead man as Jacobson, whose property bordered theirs to the south. He was a hard man, known for sharp business practices and a quick temper. "Mrs. Tucker," Jacobson said, not dismounting, "we have a problem. 4 of my steers have gone missing and my men tracked them to your property line." "We have not seen any strays," Owen said, stepping forward. "But we can help you look." Jacobson's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Owen Quincy, Mrs. Tucker's partner." "Partner." Jacobson made the word sound distasteful. "Well, partner, I do not need help looking. I need my cattle back, and I need to know why your fence has been cut in 3 places along our shared border." Olivia felt anger flash through her. "Our fence has not been cut. We just spent 2 weeks riding the entire property line and repairing every weak section." "Then you better come see for yourself," Jacobson said, "because someone cut that fence, and my cattle are gone." They saddled up quickly and rode out with Jacobson and his men. Sure enough, in 3 places along the southern fence, the wire had been deliberately cut, the posts pulled aside to create openings large enough for cattle to pass through. The cuts were fresh, made within the last day or 2. "This does not make sense," Olivia said, examining the cut wire. "Why would we cut our own fence? We have been working for months to improve our stock, not steal from neighbors." "Maybe not you," one of Jacobson's men said with a meaningful look at Owen. "But who knows about him? Drifter Cowboy shows up out of nowhere. Suddenly you are missing cattle." Owen's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. I have been working this ranch every day since January. Ask anyone in town. Check my record. I have never stolen anything in my life. Convenient that these cuts appear right after you file partnership papers, Jacobson said. Maybe you figured you would build up your herd quick before anyone got wise to you. That is ridiculous, Olivia snapped. Owen has worked harder than any man I have ever known. He would not jeopardize everything we have built. Jacobson shrugged. Either way, I want my cattle back or I want compensation. 4 head of prime beef gone because your fence got cut. We will find your cattle, Owen said. Give us 2 days. If someone drove them off, there will be tracks. We will follow them and get your stock back. Jacobson considered this, then nodded curtly. 2 days. After that, I am involving the territorial marshal and I will be pointing him your direction. After Jacobson and his men left, Olivia and Owen stood by the cut fence in the gathering darkness. Olivia's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. You believe me, do not you? Owen asked quietly. That I had nothing to do with this. Of course I believe you. Olivia turned to him, surprised he would even ask. But someone did this deliberately, and I want to know who and why. They rode back to the ranch and spent the evening examining the cuts more carefully by lantern light. The wire had been snipped with proper tools, not torn or pulled apart. The posts had been carefully removed and laid aside, suggesting someone who knew what they were doing and was not in a rush. This was not opportunistic, Owen said. Someone planned this. But who would want to sabotage us? Owen was quiet for a moment. Could be someone who does not like the idea of a widow woman running a ranch with a male partner. Could be someone who wants to buy your land cheap and sees this as a way to pressure you into selling. Or could just be bad luck and cattle thieves who saw an opportunity. Olivia thought about the looks in town, the disapproval from people like Mrs. Caldwell, the way Reverend Hastings had warned her about propriety. You think someone from town did this to make trouble? I think we have made some people uncomfortable with our arrangement, and uncomfortable people sometimes do stupid things. They started tracking at first light the next morning, following the trail of 4 steers driven north through the brush. The tracks were clear enough, 2 horses driving the cattle at a steady pace. By midday, they had covered 6 miles and were entering rougher country, hills and ravines where tracking became more difficult. They knew what they were doing, Owen said, studying the ground. Staying off main trails, using hard ground where they could. Olivia was about to respond when a gunshot cracked through the air, and her horse shied violently. Owen grabbed her reins, steadying the mare, and they both looked up to see 2 men on horseback above them on a ridge, rifles in hand. That is far enough, one of them called down. Turn around and go home. Those are our neighbor's cattle you stole, Owen called back. Let us take them back and we will forget we saw you. The second man laughed. Your neighbor's cattle, way I heard it, you are the thief here, Quincy. We are just helping move some strays. Something clicked in Olivia's mind. These men knew Owen's name, which meant this was not random cattle theft. This was personal. Who paid you? She demanded. Who put you up to this? No one paid us nothing, the first man said. We are just concerned citizens who do not like seeing a respectable widow woman being taken advantage of by some drifting cowboy with no past and no prospects. Real concerned, Owen said dryly. So concerned you cut fences and steal cattle. We did not steal nothing. These steers just wandered through some convenient gaps in the fence. Not our fault if your hired hand is too lazy or too crooked to maintain his property. Olivia felt rage building in her chest. These men, whoever they were trying to destroy everything she and Owen had built. They were trying to drive a wedge between her and her partner to make the town think Owen was a thief. Olivia, Owen said quietly, his hand moving toward his rifle. "We need to leave." "No," Olivia said firmly. "Those are Jacobson's cattle and we are taking them back. There are 2 of them with rifles already drawn and we are sitting targets down here. This is not worth dying over." But Olivia was tired of backing down, tired of people trying to push her around or make decisions for her. She had turned down charity, fought to keep her ranch, partnered with a man despite everyone's disapproval. She was not about to let 2 cattle thieves chase her off. "Fire another shot and I will assume you are trying to kill us," she called up to the men, "and I will respond accordingly. Now you can ride away and leave those cattle, or we can settle this another way." Owen looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Olivia, please." But the men on the ridge were looking at each other uncertainly. Apparently they had not expected the widow woman to show teeth. "Your funeral," the first man finally said. He fired his rifle, not at them but at the ground near the cattle. The steers bolted, scattering into the ravines. The 2 men wheeled their horses and disappeared over the ridge. Owen immediately spurred his horse forward, and Olivia followed. They crested the ridge in time to see the men riding hard to the east, already too far away to pursue effectively. But Owen was not looking at the fleeing riders. He was scanning the ravines where the cattle had scattered. "There," he pointed. "2 of them went down that draw. Let us get those first, then search for the other 2. It took them the rest of the day to find and gather all 4 steers. By the time they had them bunched and were driving them back toward Jacobson's property, the sun was setting. They delivered the cattle to Jacobson's ranch just after dark. Jacobson came out of his house, shotgun in hand, relaxing slightly when he saw them. "Found your cattle," Owen said, pushing the steers into Jacobson's corral. 2 men had them about 6 miles north. They fired warning shots but ran when we pressed them. Jacobson looked at the returned cattle, then at Owen and Olivia with something that might have been respect. "You got them all back." "All 4, Olivia confirmed. "And Owen was right. Someone cut our fence deliberately to make trouble. This was not random theft. You get a look at the men." "Not close enough to identify," Owen said, which was not entirely true. Olivia had gotten a decent look at both men and would recognize them if she saw them again, but Owen was clearly trying to avoid escalating the situation further. Jacobson nodded slowly. "Appreciate you bringing my stock back. I may have been hasty in my accusations earlier." "May have been," Owen agreed neutrally. They rode back to their ranch in darkness, both exhausted. As they unsaddled their horses, Olivia looked at Owen across the barn. "You told me to back down today." "I did." "But you did not leave without me when I refused." Owen paused in brushing down his roan. "No, I did not." "Why not?" "Because you are my partner, and partners do not abandon each other even when one of them is being recklessly stubborn." But there was no heat in his words, almost affection. Olivia smiled despite her fatigue. "Recklessly stubborn, that is probably fair." They walked to the house together, and Olivia found herself inviting Owen in for a late supper. As they ate cold chicken and bread, they discussed the day's events. "Those men knew your name," Olivia said. "And they knew about our partnership. They were sent to cause trouble, probably hoping to drive you off and make me look foolish for trusting you. Question is, who sent them?" Owen leaned back in his chair. "And what do they gain from it?" "Someone who wants me to fail. Someone who thinks a woman should not be running a ranch." Olivia thought about the disapproval in town, the way people whispered. "Or someone who wants to buy the land cheap once I am desperate enough to sell." They speculated but came to no firm conclusions. Finally, Owen stood to leave for the barn and Olivia walked him to the door. The night air was cool and fresh, and above them stars blazed across the desert sky. "Thank you," Olivia said, "for today, for finding the cattle and clearing your name." Our name, Owen corrected gently. We are partners, remember. What happens to one of us happens to both. He was standing close, close enough that Olivia could see the weariness in his face, the shadow of beard on his jaw, the way his eyes caught the lamplight from inside. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers gentle against his skin. "Owen," she said softly. He covered her hand with his, holding it against his face. "I know this is complicated. I know you are still grieving Matthew. But Olivia, you have to know that I do not," she interrupted, but gently. "Please do not say it yet, not because I do not feel something too, but because I need time to make sense of it all." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. He pressed a kiss to her palm, tender and brief, then stepped back. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." Olivia watched him walk to the barn, her hand still tingling from the kiss. Inside her chest, her heart was doing complicated things. Grief and guilt and hope all tangled together in ways she could not sort out. The following weeks brought more trouble. Someone started rumors in town that Owen had a criminal past, that he had drifted from ranch to ranch leaving debts and angry former employers in his wake. Olivia went to Apache Junction to confront whoever was spreading lies, but the stories were too vague to pin down. Always something someone had heard from someone else. Then their water supply mysteriously fouled, and it took 2 days to discover that someone had thrown a dead coyote into the spring. They cleaned it out, but several head of cattle got sick, and one died. "This is escalating," Owen said grimly as they buried the dead steer. "Someone is committed to driving us out. Let them try," Olivia said. "I am not leaving and neither are you," but the constant harassment was wearing. They took turns watching the property at night, catching sleep in shifts. Olivia was exhausted, running on anger and stubbornness, and she could see Owen was wearing thin as well. It was during one of these night watches in early June that things came to a head. Olivia was supposed to be sleeping, but she could not rest. She got up and went to the barn to check on Owen, only to find him gone and his horse missing. Panic flared. She saddled her mare and rode out, following the clear trail of his horse heading south. She found him near the border with Jacobson's property, sitting on his horse and staring at a fresh message someone had painted on a large boulder in the moonlight. "Drifters and thieves not welcome." "I was coming back," Owen said without turning. "I just needed to see it for myself." Olivia rode up beside him. "It is lies. Everyone who matters knows it." "Do they?" Owen finally looked at her, and she could see the frustration and weariness in his face. "Olivia, maybe I should go. I came here wanting a fresh start, wanting to build something real. But all I have brought you is trouble." "No." Olivia's voice was sharp. "You brought me a partner when I needed one. You brought me hope when I was ready to give up. You brought me back to life when I thought I was just going to survive, never really live again. Do not you dare talk about leaving. I am thinking of you, your reputation, your safety." "My reputation was already questionable the moment I turned down the church's charity, and my safety is better with you here than without you." Olivia urged her mare closer until she was right beside him. "Owen Quincy, you are the most honorable man I have ever known, and if you ride away now, I will hunt you down and drag you back myself." Owen looked at her for a long moment, and then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a rough, tired sound, but genuine. "You would too, would not you?" Without hesitation, he reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I love you, Olivia. I know I said I would wait until you were ready to hear it, but I cannot keep it in anymore. I love you, and that is why this is so hard. Because I want to protect you, even if it means leaving." Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. The words she had not let him speak weeks ago, The truth she had been avoiding was out now, hanging in the moonlight between them. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is too soon, too complicated. But I wake up looking forward to seeing you. I go to sleep thinking about our conversations. And when those men fired at us, all I could think was that I could not lose you too." Owen dismounted and lifted his hands to help her down. When her feet touched the ground, he did not let go, just pulled her close until there was no space between them. "Tell me this is real," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Tell me I am not imagining this. It is real." Olivia wrapped her arms around him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her chest. All of it, the partnership, this feeling, all of it is real. When Owen kissed her, it felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure all at once. Olivia kissed him back with months of pent-up longing, with grief transformed into something new, with hope she had not let herself feel. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious, and she held on to him like he might disappear. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "We still have someone trying to drive us out," he said practically. "Then we deal with it together," Olivia replied. "As partners, as more than partners." They rode back to the ranch hand in hand, and this time when they reached the house, Olivia did not let Owen continue to the barn. "Stay," she said simply. "I am tired of sleeping alone in that house while you are out in the barn. I am tired of pretending this is just business. Stay with me." Owen looked toward the barn, then back at her. "That will really give the town something to talk about. The town can go hang. This is our ranch, our lives, our choice." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Please, Owen, I want you here." So Owen stayed. He brought his few possessions from the barn, hung his hat by the door, and for the first time since Matthew's death, Olivia did not feel alone in her own home. They lay together that night, fully clothed and above the blankets, talking in the darkness about everything and nothing. Owen told her about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 16, about the years of hard work and harder luck that had led him to Arizona. Olivia told him about her childhood in Tucson, about meeting Matthew, about the dreams they had shared for this ranch. "Do you think he would understand?" Olivia asked quietly. "Matthew, I mean, about us," Owen considered carefully. "I think a man who loved you would want you to be happy, and I think he would understand that life keeps moving forward even when we think it has stopped." Olivia rolled to face him, able to make out his features in the moonlight through the window. "I will always love him, you know. What we had, it was real and good. I know. And I would never ask you to forget him or pretend he did not matter." Owen brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But there is room in a heart for more than one love, Olivia. The love you had for Matthew does not diminish what we can have together." It was exactly what she needed to hear, permission to move forward without guilt, acknowledgement that her past and her future could coexist. She kissed him again, soft and sweet, and felt something settle in her chest, like a piece of herself that had been displaced sliding back into place. The next morning, they confronted their saboteur problem with renewed determination. Owen rode into town and spoke with the territorial marshal, filing official complaints about the vandalism and harassment. The marshal, a grizzled man named Cooper, agreed to investigate. Meanwhile, Olivia visited every ranch within 20 miles, making it clear that she and Owen were not going anywhere and that they would not be intimidated. To her surprise, several ranchers expressed support, saying they respected what she was trying to do and admired her grit. "Not everyone in this territory is stuck in old ways," one older rancher told her. "Some of us remember when this was all new, when people did what they had to do to survive. You are doing right by yourself and that young man of yours. That young man of yours. Olivia did not correct the assumption. Let people think what they would. She and Owen knew what they had, and that was enough. It was Jacobson, surprisingly, who helped break the case. He came to their ranch one evening in late June with information. "Had one of my hands quit today," he said without preamble. "Before he left, he told me he had been offered money by a man in town to help cause trouble for you and Quincy. $20 to cut your fence, 30 more to foul your water supply." "Did he say who?" Owen asked. "Fellow named Harrison, owns the land office in Apache Junction." Jacobson looked uncomfortable. "I should have listened when you said someone was sabotaging you. I let my prejudice get in the way of seeing the truth." Harrison. Olivia knew the name. He had approached her twice about selling the ranch, once right after Matthew died and again a month later. She had refused both times. "He wants the land," she said. "Probably has a buyer lined up, someone who would pay well for property with good water access." "That would be my guess," Jacobson agreed. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" What they did was gather evidence. Owen spoke with Jacobson's former hand, getting a written statement about Harrison's offers. The marshal investigated and found 2 other men who admitted to being paid to spread rumors. With enough evidence, Marshal Cooper arrested Harrison for conspiracy and criminal mischief. Harrison, faced with jail time, confessed everything. He had a buyer from back east who wanted to establish a large cattle operation and was willing to pay premium prices for established ranches with water rights. Harrison had figured if he could drive Olivia and Owen out, he could buy the land cheap and sell it for a massive profit. "You cost me a fortune," Harrison told Olivia bitterly when she confronted him at the jail. "That ranch should have been mine to sell." "That ranch was never yours," Olivia replied, "and it never will be. Some things cannot be bought or stolen, they have to be earned." With Harrison arrested and his hired troublemakers run out of the territory, peace finally settled over the ranch. Olivia and Owen threw themselves into the work of summer, preparing for fall roundup and making plans for expanding the herd. But it was not all work. In the evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset and talking about their future. Owen carved a new sign for the ranch gate, "Tucker Quincy Ranch," acknowledging both their contributions. Olivia started teaching Owen to read and write better, something he had never had much opportunity to learn. And in return, he taught her rope tricks and shooting skills that made her an even better ranch hand. By late summer, everyone in Apache Junction had accepted that Olivia and Owen were together. Some still disapproved, but most had come to respect what they had built. Even Reverend Hastings begrudgingly admitted that the partnership seemed to be working out. One evening in September, as they watched the first hints of autumn creeping into the desert, Owen took Olivia's hand. "Marry me," he said simply. "Not because people expect it, not to make the partnership more legitimate. Marry me because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life building this dream with you." Olivia looked at the ring he offered, a simple silver band he must have bought on one of his trips to town. It was not elaborate, but it was honest and real, like everything else about Owen. "Yes," she said, not needing time to think. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married in October, exactly a year after Matthew's death. It was a small ceremony, just the marshal and Jacobson and his wife as witnesses, held at the ranch under the open sky. Olivia wore a simple blue dress, not black, and Owen wore his best shirt and a new vest. When they exchanged vows, Olivia felt no guilt, only joy and gratitude that life had given her this second chance. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from 73 head to over 200. They hired on 2 permanent hands and seasonal workers for roundup and branding. They finished the house, adding a second bedroom and a proper kitchen, and built a new barn that did not leak. In the spring of 1884, Olivia gave birth to a son they named Matthew Owen, honoring both the past and the present. Owen proved to be a patient, devoted father, and Olivia discovered that motherhood suited her better than she had expected. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, whom they named Sarah after Owen's mother. The town of Apache Junction grew and changed around them. The railroad extended south, bringing new settlers and new opportunities. The Apache Junction that had once looked askance at a widow partnering with a drifter cowboy became a place where women owned businesses and people were judged more on their character than their conformity. Through it all, Olivia and Owen remained partners in every sense of the word. They made decisions together, worked side by side, and built a legacy that went beyond cattle and land. They built a family, a home, and a love that proved strong enough to weather any storm. On their 10th anniversary, they stood on that same porch where Owen had first proposed, watching their children play in the yard. The ranch stretched out around them, thriving and solid, a testament to what could be built when 2 stubborn, determined people refused to give up. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Olivia asked, leaning against Owen's shoulder. "When you showed up offering partnership?" "Every day," Owen said, wrapping his arm around her. "Best business decision I ever made." Olivia laughed and poked him in the ribs. "Just business." "Well, the benefits of the partnership have exceeded my initial projections," Owen said with a grin. Then more seriously, "You took a chance on me when you had every reason not to. You saw past the drifter cowboy to the man underneath. And you gave me something I had been searching for my whole life." "What was that?" "Home, family, a place where I belong." Owen kissed the top of her head. "You gave me everything, Olivia." "We gave each other everything," Olivia corrected. "That is what real partnership means." As the sun set over the Superstition Mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From widow to partner to wife to mother, she had been transformed by circumstance and choice. The ranch that Matthew had started, she and Owen had built into something even greater than his original vision. Matthew would have been proud, she thought. Proud that his dream had survived, proud that she had found happiness again, proud that the land he had loved was being cared for by people who understood its value. But this was not Matthew's story anymore. It was hers and Owen's, written together in sweat and determination and love. They had refused to accept what others said was impossible. They had found equality in partnership and discovered that working side by side made them both stronger. Years continued to pass, bringing more changes, more challenges, and more joys. Their children grew strong and capable, learning to work the ranch and carry on the legacy their parents had built. Young Matthew showed his father's patience and skill with horses, while Sarah had her mother's determination and sharp business sense. In 1895, when a drought threatened the entire territory, it was the Tucker Quincy Ranch that helped organize water sharing among neighboring properties, ensuring that everyone's cattle survived. Owen's reputation as a fair and skilled rancher had grown over the years, and people came to him for advice and assistance. Olivia managed the business side of the operation with such acumen that other ranchers' wives began consulting her about their own finances and planning. They added to their family once more, a surprise late in life, when another son arrived in 1896. They named him James, and his arrival brought fresh joy and energy to the household. At 40 years old, Olivia found motherhood no less exhausting but infinitely more rewarding the third time around. 3 children, Owen said one night, bouncing baby James on his knee while their older children did homework at the kitchen table. We have built quite a legacy here. The children are the legacy, Olivia said, watching the scene with contentment. The ranch is just what we leave them to build their own dreams on. As the new century approached, the Tucker Quincy Ranch stood as one of the most successful operations in the Arizona territory. But more than that, it stood as proof that unconventional partnerships could not only survive but thrive. That widows could be ranchers, that drifters could find home, that love could bloom in unexpected places and times. On a warm spring evening in 1902, Olivia and Owen celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a large gathering at the ranch. Friends and neighbors from across the territory came to honor the couple who had defied expectations and built something remarkable. Jack Hobson, now in his 70s, stood to offer a toast. 20 years ago, I thought Olivia Tucker was crazy for partnering with a drifter cowboy. I thought Owen Quincy was a fool for trying to make a go of it with a struggling widow's ranch. I have never been happier to be proven wrong. To Olivia and Owen, who showed us all what real partnership looks like. The crowd raised their glasses, and Olivia felt Owen's hand find hers under the table, squeezing gently. She looked at him and saw the same dark eyes that had met hers so steadily that first day. But now they held the warmth of shared history, of challenges overcome together, of a love that had only deepened with time. Their children, Matthew now 18, and preparing to take over more responsibility on the ranch, Sarah 16, and already showing signs of becoming a formidable woman in her own right, and young James just learning to ride, represented the future. But Olivia and Owen had built the foundation on which that future would stand. As the party continued around them, Owen leaned close to Olivia's ear. Any regrets? Olivia thought about the scared, grieving widow she had been, the woman who had slammed the door on charity and chosen the hard path of independence. She thought about the leap of faith she had taken trusting a stranger who offered partnership instead of pity. She thought about all the obstacles they had overcome, all the joy they had found, all the love they had built. Not a single one, she said, turning to kiss him. You. Only that I did not find you sooner, Owen replied. But then again, maybe we met exactly when we were supposed to. When we were both ready to be true partners. To partnership, Olivia said softly, raising her glass to touch his. To partnership, Owen echoed. And to love. The years that followed their anniversary brought the changes that age and time inevitably deliver. Young Matthew took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, proving himself more than capable. He married a teacher from town in 1905, and they gave Olivia and Owen their first grandchildren, twin boys, in 1906. Sarah surprised everyone by going east to study at a women's college, returning with ideas about modern ranch management and business practices that helped the Tucker Quincy Ranch continue to prosper, even as the frontier era faded into history. She never married, instead pouring her considerable energy and intelligence into expanding the family business and advocating for women's property rights throughout the territory. James, the youngest, inherited his father's way with horses and his mother's business sense. He established a horse breeding program that became renowned throughout the Southwest. As Arizona moved toward statehood in 1912, Olivia and Owen found themselves slowing down, content to let their children manage the operation while they enjoyed their grandchildren and the fruits of their decades of labor. They still took rides together in the early morning, still sat on the porch at sunset, still made decisions together, even if the decisions were now about smaller things. One evening in the spring of 1915, as they watched their grandchildren play in the yard and their children manage the ranch with capable confidence. Olivia rested her head on Owen's shoulder. "We did it," she said quietly. "Everything we set out to do, we did it together." Owen wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "We did more than survive. We built something beautiful." "Yes, we did." Olivia thought about the terrified widow who had refused charity, the determined woman who had chosen partnership, the person she had become through love and hard work. "Thank you, Owen, for seeing something in me worth partnering with, for loving me, for building this life with me." "No, thank you," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "For taking a chance on a drifter cowboy, for being my equal in all things, for making every day an adventure worth having." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the land they had worked together for more than 30 years. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving, home to 3 generations and countless memories. The house they had finished together, the barns they had built, the fences they had mended, the cattle bearing the Tucker Quincy brand, all of it stood as testament to what could be achieved when 2 people met as equals and built something together. In town, the story of the widow who refused charity and the cowboy who offered partnership had become local legend. Young people spoke of Olivia and Owen as proof that love could be found in unexpected places, that unconventional paths could lead to happiness, that partnership between equals was the strongest foundation for any endeavor. But for Olivia and Owen, it was not legend or story. It was simply their life, made real through daily choice and constant effort. The choice to trust, to work together, to support each other through hardship and celebrate together in joy. The choice to love, not just in grand gestures but in the small moments that made up a life shared. As darkness fell and the stars emerged over the Arizona desert, their grandchildren were called inside for supper. Their children handled the evening tasks with practiced efficiency. And Olivia and Owen remained on the porch, hand in hand, 2 people who had found in each other exactly what they had needed most: a partner, an equal, a love worth building a life around. The Tucker Quincy Ranch would endure long after them, passing through generations, adapting to changing times, but always remembering the foundation on which it was built. Not just land and cattle and water rights, but the principle that had guided everything Olivia and Owen did together. That real partnership meant respecting each other's strengths, supporting each other's weaknesses, and always facing the world as equals. And that night, as Olivia fell asleep in Owen's arms in the house they had finished together, she knew with perfect certainty that she had lived a life of purpose, of love, and of partnership in its truest form. The scared widow who had slammed a door on charity had found something infinitely better: a partner who saw her strength, a love that honored her independence, and a legacy that would endure long after the last sunset faded over the Superstition Mountains.